Hi, Susan.
Mhm.
As you know, Susan is my good friend and prayer partner, but also known for her work as an integral coach. And her website is rigsintegralcoaching.org. And just so you have that up front. Anyway, she and I have been working on a project this year called Engaging with a Messy World. And we have now gotten to the 10th and final episode of this 10-part series. And it has been really a great experience for me to be on the receiving end of Susan's wisdom and how she puts together a strategy to help us all thrive instead of suffering with some of the complications of our messy world. And so we reach now the final episode, and she will take us through that. And I am so glad that you're listening to this. I encourage you to stick with it to the end because I think there are many, many rewards for all of us individually and for our world. So there you go, Susan. It's all yours.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, it has been really good to do this series, and I'm pulling together wisdom from a lot of people who are wiser than I am, and I'm just putting it together in a package that makes sense to me. And it's been a privilege to offer it to people to see if it helps anyone else. These are what I think are some of the key skills that people need to navigate the state of the world, which is so volatile and uncertain and scary these days. So I want to bring it all together in this final episode with an overarching concept, because everything that we've talked about falls under one big category, which can be described as if we want to change the world, we have to change ourselves. This is often phrased as we must be the change we wish to see in the world, which is true, and it's a useful idea as far as it goes, meaning that we all need to do our part, pitch in and do what we can. But there's actually more to it. There's more richness in this, which I want to explore for a minute, because the saying "we must be the change we wish to see in the world" is often attributed to Gandhi, and he never actually said it that way. What he said was something a little bit more subtle and richer, and we're going to try screen sharing. So go ahead with that, Donna. Okay, so what Gandhi said was, "We but mirror the world. All the tendencies present in the outer world are to be found in the world of our body. If we could change ourselves, the tendencies in the world would also change. As man changes his own nature, so does the attitude of the world change towards him. This is the divine mystery supreme, a wonderful thing it is, and the source of our happiness. We need not wait to see what others do." Um, what this means is that the blind spots and the unhealed traumas of all of us human beings create the suffering that's in the world. We can do an incredible amount of harm when we're operating in a blind spot, operating out of our unhealed wounds. Like maybe we have an opinion and we're very sure we're right and we're not interested in anyone else's experience. Um, Maybe we think we're entitled to do something to people or to the planet. So healing our own wounds is critical for us to stop harming others and start actually helping. So that's enough for that quote. If you can take that down, we'll look at each other. Yeah. So I think the enlightened approach to a messy world is to be always doing both inner and outer work. They both matter deeply. So we have to take outward action, like voting and volunteer work and being kind to people. We have to take concrete action. And we also have to do our inner work of growing and being more self aware, because that will have a huge impact on the quality and the effectiveness of the outward work that we do. Otherwise, we can just do more harm than good. So I want to share a really cool example of this that I ran into many years ago. I became interested in group dream work. And there's a book by Jeremy Taylor, a Unitarian pastor, who wrote the book on group dream work. It's called The Wisdom of Your Dreams, and we'll have it in the show notes. So was a pastor back in California in the 1960s, starting in the 1960s. He continued for decades. And he wrote in the book about working in social justice projects in a small town near Oakland. He was one of a group of white people doing projects in a small, predominantly Black town. And over time, the community residents, the activists who were living there and working there and trying to improve things, became very frustrated with the visiting volunteers who were white, because the visiting volunteers were unconsciously racist and they were very condescending. They weren't listening, they were disrespectful. They didn't realize they were doing that, but they were really unhelpful, and the community finally asked them to leave. So, as a healing project, Jeremy Taylor offered to meet with these people and help them examine their own unconscious racism, which they were willing to do, but they didn't know how to do it. They were really frustrated, deeply frustrated by their own inability to overcome their blind spots. And so they had meeting after meeting and got nowhere until one day, in desperation, Jeremy Taylor asked the group to come the next time with a dream to share, a real dream, the movies that play in your head when you sleep. And they were willing, because what did they have to lose? The next meeting, they came and they started sharing their dreams. And something really extraordinary happened, because dreams are where our unconscious speaks to us. And it shows us, if we know how to work with it skillfully, which a group can do if it's well guided, it shows us where our wounds are and where our growth needs to be. And these people willingly worked on their dreams. They continued to do that for a number of meetings. And the dreams helped them see their projections. They saw how they had a lot of deep internal fear. And because they didn't know how to face it, they were projecting it onto other people, specifically people who didn't look like them. And that led them to all these actions that were unconsciously racist. So they did some inner work and became much more open, much more self-aware. Eventually, they offered to go back into the community. The community let them give it a try, and they were amazed that these white people were suddenly respectful, cooperative, willing to listen, and really good to work with. There was a transformation. The outward work became possible and became much more effective once they had done the inner work. So I love that story.
That's interesting. Well, dream work may not be for everyone, and not everyone has access to someone to help them with dreams. So I'm glad you put the reference in there, Susan, because otherwise we can sort of feel lost with our dreams. So that maybe will help some
Yes.
people.
Yes, and as you know, I love dream work. I use it in my coaching. I think it's an extraordinarily powerful way to get at where our growth needs to be.
Yes,
So that was really cool.
I know that personally. You've helped me with a couple of weird dreams I've had through the years.
Yes, yes, and I work with my own all the time. So that's one piece. So a much more current example is the work of Richard Schwartz, who developed over 40 years ago the system of internal family systems, which is a mode of therapy. And he's a leading therapist in the world. He goes all over the world teaching this process of looking inside us and tending to the wounded parts and the hiding parts and the acting out parts that are inside us. It's inner work. And it has been extraordinarily helpful for countless people around the world. And one of the things that fascinates me whenever I go to one of his talks is he talks about providing therapy, one-on-one therapy, to leaders of justice movements. He works with leaders of nonprofits and with activists to help them deal with their inner work so that their outer work can be more effective. It's a really cool way that he has of offering to change the world. So the reference to his work is also going to be in the show notes. And without doing that work, we not only do more harm than good through our blind spots, but we also burn out much more easily. And burnout is a sure sign that we have inner work to do, in addition to the fact that the world is messy. So that's the modern, the more recent equivalent of inner work making outer work better. So I hope that makes sense.
It does. I suppose there would be some people who went through burnout who might bristle at that, because I think there are some circumstances, some work systems that are so unyielding and unfair that, and unchangeable really, that no matter what state of mind the employee or worker might have, they're going to have a hard time dealing with it, and not everybody can quit. I think I agree with you, but I just wanted to add that little qualification for those out there who have burnt out and thought, wait, that wasn't my fault.
That is absolutely true. Sometimes the system is just really bad and is overwhelming. And if a person is able to get out, they need to get out. Sometimes that's the action that's needed. And if they're not, they need to just tend their own survival as best they can.
Right.
This is definitely not intended to blame the victim. Yeah. So, one of the lovely things about this inner healing work is that it brings us to more self compassion. And that's something that is hard for a lot of people to do. It certainly has been for me. I'm pretty much on board with being compassionate toward other people, but to be compassionate toward myself has been much harder to see even when I'm not doing it. And it's painful and complicated to do, but that's how we change. That's how we heal. And the internal family systems work in particular is especially aimed at being compassionate toward all the parts of ourselves. And it's really transformational. Um, and the kindness that we can learn to bring toward our younger selves and our inner hurt selves, um, it brings love and aliveness that can flow through us and out into the world. It's really exciting, energizing work. So much suffering in the world comes from people acting out their unhealed wounds, and facing our own pain with kindness helps us stop acting out and start doing good work. So it's really fundamental. We cannot do good work in the world unless we're bringing compassion to ourselves and doing that painful work.
Right. It does change your perspective. I think you've spoken about how that having compassionate towards yourself and maybe your mistakes and your past behaviors about which now you can see more clearly and have regrets does allow you to be more compassionate toward others because you understand, um, we're all in that together some way or another.
Yeah. Yeah. And you've been especially good at reminding me about the need for quiet time. Would you like to talk about that a bit?
Yeah, I mean, I think there are folks listening to this who just understand kind of what this is all about, but don't know where to start. How would you start? How do you just start doing inner work, or how do you be more mindful of your blind spots? How does that work? I mean, some people do it with a therapist, some people do it with a coach, some people are greatly moved with the right book at the right time, all of those things. But I think a prerequisite in my way of thinking is that we have to allow some time, quiet time for introspection and reflection, and whether that be meditative prayer or walking in nature. Everybody has a different path, a different style, but I think if there's not some kind of quiet and solitude, this growth is going to be kind of hard to come by. Sometimes a crisis gives you that opportunity, but I think intentional quiet time and solitude on a very regular basis is the first step if you're listening and feel stuck, because these are not things you can make a 10-point plan and just accomplish starting tomorrow. Some of these things you have to allow to happen by somehow opening your heart and your mind to this process. Um, and I say this recognizing it may sound kind of weird. It certainly has been weird for me to gradually try and understand that just a little bit, that this I can't just fix myself. I to some degree have to allow myself to be open to the healing, the way I look at it, the healing power of God within, but also open to the holiness of each other people who are out there struggling as well in their own way. So anyway, the process that you talk about certainly does enhance compassion, I think, for others.
Yes. One of the things we say in my coaching field is change takes place in biological time. It takes time. We have to metabolize our changes. It's not just from one day to the next. And part of that is, as you said, quiet time is essential. We can't do it without that. And it's very much analogous to physical exercise. We can't get strong and healthy without doing the exercise over and over. And so taking quiet time to develop self-awareness is literally a form of exercising that
That
muscle of self-awareness.
that's a huge, that's a fabulous way to make that point, Susan. I'm so glad you said that.
Cool. So I want to add that this inner work for the purpose of helping the world is even being recognized by the United Nations. The United Nations some years ago developed the Sustainable Development Goals, which are about making the world sustainable. And progress so far has been pretty poor. The world is not on track to be sustainable. And it is recognized by the people who lead in this effort that the issue is not technological, it's people. It's a human problem. And there's a nonprofit that has developed something they call the Inner Development Goals, which will be referenced in the show notes. And it's all about these skills, very much the same skills that we've been talking about, that lots of people need to develop in order for the world to be led to a place where it's sustainable. The inner development is going to have to be done in order for us to do the sustainable development on the outside.
Fascinating.
Yeah. And there are people who are aware of this and working on it and leading on it. So that's really cool. So one last thought, and I'm going to ask you to share your screen one more time with the second slide. There we go. So this is a quote that I really enjoy. We have no idea what's possible. It's important to keep ourselves open to imagination and possibilities, because it could be that with enough compassion and self-development and love, aliveness, that wonderful things may happen. And this is not me putting rose-colored glasses on. This is just saying it's wide open. Let's see what we can do by doing our work.
That's fabulous. That leaves the possibilities wide open for all of us. And I think many of us have so many blessings, and put these ideas out there and just see what seeds sprout and what wonderful things come of it. It's been such a pleasure and a joy to work with you on this, Susan. If any of you listening find this valuable, maybe you could use it for a group that you have, or watch it with a couple of friends as a discussion tool. Obviously, we would love if more people could listen to this, because it's been so valuable for us. We just want to share what we think might be helpful. So if you'd like to learn more about Susan, as I said, she's available as a coach, and she has a website, integralcoaching.org. And
Riggs Integral Coaching.
sorry, riggs.integralcoaching.org. And my blog and website is at serenityandhealth.com. We're both available. If anybody wants to reach us for a conversation or an email exchange or whatever, please feel free. As Susan alluded to, there will be show notes attached with the references. So that is it. This is the end of engaging with the messy world, and it's been our pleasure to be with you, any of you who are out there. And thank you, Susan. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Okay, bye-bye.